Continue with module 5. We will discuss about network architecture. Just like you studied, every network architecture will be divided into layers, right? It may be any network architecture. It will be having a layered structure, or you can say it will be having some hierarchical structure. This you are aware of. What is saying? It provides for the implementation of network functionalities in different layers of a reference model. Many of the reference model we have already studied in CCN. Similarly, here also the architecture consists of different layers. Each layer will be having its own functionality. And remember that we are talking about telecommunication system, which makes use of optical fibers. So basically, we are talking about network architecture of telephone system. It is made up of different layers. Each layer will be having different functionalities. Now, why they go for partitioning the functions, right? The partitioning of functions following a logical methodology defines communication tasks into a set of hierarchical layers, right? With a standardized network architecture. Means what? Like here we are dividing the functions into multiple layers, right? A task will be divided. Every layer will be assigned a separate task. This is what we are discussing. Like each layer in the network architecture performs a related set of functions in order that a user system will be able to communicate with another user system, right? Basically here we are talking when we say system, it is nothing but a heterogeneous computer. So one computer will be communicating with another computer system, right? How they communicate? They communicate because of the tasks performed by different layers present in the network architecture. Now, one more thing you should remember, both that the sending side as well as the receiving side will be having the same set of layers, network layers. Sending side will also have the same set of layers. Receiving side will also have the same set of layers. Or in other words, sending system will follow the same protocols as well as the receiving system. What is saying? The ultimate purpose of this approach is to produce a network that can be physically and operationally interconnected, right? And that offers large network capacity while also ensuring network protection and survivability. Now here, the one thing that we have to take into consideration is like we want to connect one system with the other, right? Or a simple example is like you want to make a call from one telephone to another telephone. Now a call will get connected from the calling person to the called person only if both the systems are following the same set of protocols, right? Or you can say that the layers present in the sending system should be same as that of the receiving system. Therefore, a major functionality of the optical network physical layer, of course, we have, when we say layers, we have network layers. The base of the layer, base of the network layers is always a physical layer. This thing, the lowest layer will always be a physical layer. So here also we have a physical layer that is nothing but optical network physical layer. What it does, it is used to provide appropriate routing and switching strategies within the optical multiplexed networks. Next, we talk about something called as network modes, right? Modes, networking modes here. We of course you guys know already. You have studied it. Like we have what is that? Circuit switching and packet switching. You guys are well aware of these two concepts, right? The same concepts will be repeated here. See, there are two networking modes in which a transmission path can be established, and these are referred to as either connection oriented or connectionless. What happens in connection oriented? Connection oriented is similar to your circuit switching system, right? When you talk about circuit switching, there has to be a physical connection from sending side to the receiving side, right? There should be a physical connection between the sending side and receiving side, right? And that connection should exist till all the information has been sent, right? Once all the information has been sent, you can make use of those resources for another connection. But when you talk about connectionless, you know this thing already, like there won't be any uh, closed path, physical path won't be there, right? And the data will be transmitted in terms of packets. So the same thing will be repeated here, like first talking about connection oriented network. Here we'll be having a end-to-end connection, right? Generally it is referred to as handshaking. It is performed before transmission takes place. So in connection oriented network, the sending side and the receiving side have to perform something called as handshaking. Handshaking are nothing but acknowledgement signals. Connection oriented networks employ a bidirectional communication environment, right? It will be a bidirectional. If sending side sends something, then in turn a receiving side has to send something. It may be a data or it may be acknowledgement. Usually what happens, if the sending side is sending the data, the receiving side will send the acknowledgement after receiving the data. So it will be a bidirectional communication always, right? In connection oriented networks, it will be a bidirectional communication to initiate a connection so that both source and destination can communicate with each other. Once the path is determined, all the subsequent information and data are sent to and from the destination using the established connection. Once you set up the connection, data can be sent or received, right, from using the established connection. So this is all about connection oriented network. Next we talk about connectionless networking mode. This is somewhat similar to the packet switching, right? There will be no dedicated end-to-end connection in connectionless networking mode, and therefore no explicit connection setup is performed before the actual data transmission. So in this kind of networking mode, you need not set up the connection initially, whereas in connection oriented, if you remember, before you transmit any data, there has to be a connection, a physical connection, basically from sending side to receiving side. If there is a connection, then only you can send the data, right? So connection has to be established beforehand in the case of connection oriented networking mode. But in the case of connectionless, there need not be any connection setup that has to be performed before, right? No explicit connection setup is performed before the actual data transmission. Hence, the transmission is simply launched into a common fiber channel, such as the bus or a ring, which interconnects the networking nodes. Right? You simply launch the data, right? And the data will reach the destination by itself. Usually, how it happens, because the data will be sent in terms of packets there, right? Each packet will be having the address of the destination. So packet will be routed through the nodes, network nodes, right? Ultimately, it is going to reach the destination. The connectionless networking communication mode is often achieved by transmitting information in one direction, that is from the source to destination, without confirming the presence or readiness of the destination to receive the information. we here in the connectionless networking mode, the sending side won't bother whether the receiving side is ready or not, right? The sending side will simply send the data, right? It will not bother about whether the destination is ready for receiving the information, right? That is one more thing about connectionless networking communication mode. Now, in such networks, we need to provide addressing information. Why? Because here the packets have to be routed, right? We don't have a dedicated path. The packets have to reach the destination by themselves by passing through the nodes, and hence they need to have addressing information, right? And also they should have data, the actual data that you want to send, and the both the addressing information as well as the data will be organized in terms of small blocks. Those small blocks which contain the data as well as the address, they are known as packets, right? Where each packet is will be assigned a unique number and sent in sequence such that destination node can reassemble them to construct the complete message. By looking at this statement, you can say that suppose if we have a message large message that has to be sent from source to destination, so what will happen there is that large message will be broken down into small parts. Those small parts are nothing but your packets, and it will be sent. At the receiving side, again, the receiving side has to reassemble all the packets together and get back the original message. So for making this as a easy thing, what they do is while sending the packets, they assign sequence number also. Each packet will be having a sequence number. So the receiving side will read the sequence number and arrange the packets in sequence so that it can reconstruct the original message, original long message. Next, we talk about network switching modes. Of course, the in the previous case, it was we were talking about two types of networking. Right now, we are talking about network switching modes. Two primary modes are circuit switching and packet switching. Packet switching is also called as cell switching. So when we talk about circuit switching, we will be having an end-to-end circuit, right? That is required to be set up before establishing a connection, right? There has to be an end-to-end circuit connection, and that it should be present before establishing the connection in the case of circuit switched mode. Now, all the specific network resources necessary for switching are dedicated for a particular transmission during which no other transmission can access the resources. To understand this sentence statement, the best example for you guys is making a telephone call from person A to person B. If a person A makes a call to person B, the resources that will get utilized will be what will the resources that get utilized will be the link, physical link from person A to person B, right? Or you can say the trunk present between person A and person B will be utilized. That is nothing but the resource is being utilized. Now while the call is going on, that particular trunk cannot be used for any other call. Getting it? Or you can say that that resource will be held till the call gets over, or say the call gets end, right? The same thing has been put up in a different statement here. See, all the specific network resources necessary for the switching are dedicated for a particular transmission, and during that no other transmission can access the resources. If the line is busy in any call, you cannot make use of that line for making another call because it is busy. You can use it only when it becomes free. The same thing goes with this statement. Furthermore, more such transmissions are continuous and hence arrive in real time. Again, best example is telephone call. Right, a telephone call always happens in real time only. Right, like you cannot store and transfer the call. Right, so such transmissions are continuous and hence they have to arrive in real time. Right, if they fail to arrive in real time, it is lost. Again, we have to think about what you have studied in DSS already. We talk about lost call system. Right, telephone telephone network is nothing but a lost call system. Means what? If the call doesn't get connected in real time, it will be lost. Right, we cannot store and forward the call. Right, the same thing applies here. The transmissions are continuous and hence they arrive in real time. Once the transmission is complete, the circuit will be terminated. Right, and the resource will be made available to the other users. Again, going back to the example that I took, if you are making a call, a trunk will be occupied and the trunk will not be free till the call gets end. Right, once the call gets end, we can make use of the same trunk for making another call. Right, the same thing goes good with this. Therefore, the circuit switching mode can be characterized as it is a continuous. Circuit switching mode is continuous, selective and temporary. Right, circuit switching is utilized in connection oriented networks. We call it as temporary because we cannot store it. Right, we cannot store and forward. It has to happen in real time. Next one is the packet or cell switching mode. Here we imply a concept called as store and forward. Right, what happens in store and forward strategy? Incoming messages will be forwarded to the corresponding destinations, right, in the form of blocks. And you guys already know the best example for packet switching is sending a SMS. Right, if you send a SMS and if that other person is busy or say his inbox is full, what will happen to the message? Will the message be lost? No, it will not be lost. What will happen to that? It will be stored. It will be stored in the message center. Right, once the receiving side becomes free or say his inbox has sufficient space for receiving the SMSs, what will happen? The same SMS will be delivered after some delay also. The delay may be for 1 day. Right, depends upon the message center. So there we come across a concept called as store and forward. Means what? The communication need not happen in real time. Right, we can store the message and forward it later also. That is why the packet or cell switching mode implies a store and forward strategy where incoming messages are forwarded to their corresponding destinations. Of course, the messages will be transferred in terms of blocks. Those blocks are called as packets. Sending or receiving a complete message in a single block requires buffering stage. Buffering means you have to hold it for a while, where the information can be gathered before it is sent to the destination. Alternatively, message can be sent in small blocks if required. If you want to send a large message, that large message can be broken up into small blocks. Those small blocks are called as packets, or even smaller blocks we have, those are called as cells. Right, if you break down a large message into small blocks, there will not be need for buffering. You can send it directly. Hence, the message will be divided into packets. Packets comprise variable length blocks of data which will be having a tight upper bound limit. Means there will be limit for the size. There will be limit for the size of packet or a cell which incorporates fixed length of data. Packets or cells are nothing but smaller version of packet. Now, packets or cells may form maybe from different sources, right? Even though they are coming from different sources, the packet or cells may come from different sources. Now what they will do is, you can multiplex them. You can multiplex the packets or cells and they will be sent to the destination. In a statistical multiplexing, a fixed bandwidth communication channel is divided into several variable channels, and the desired or requested bandwidth is allocated to each end user. This constructs a simple time or wavelength division multiplexing where fixed bandwidth is assigned. The best example for this is your cell phone mobile communication. I think you have come across the concepts of channel allocation in LTE, right? The given bandwidth will be divided into number of channels, right? And each channel will be allocated to the user based on the time frame. I hope you have come across this concept in LTE. The same thing applies here also. Finally, both packet and cell switching are applied in connection-oriented networks. Packets, however, are also often employed in connectionless networks. See, if you look at the last statement, he is saying that the packet and cell switching can be used in connection-oriented network, right? Whereas if you are going for own packets, the packets can be used also in connectionless networks. Next, we talk about something called as virtual circuit. Virtual, the meaning of virtual, it doesn't exist in reality, or say it is not fixed. Here we here circuit is not, the meaning of circuit is a path, right? Now, virtual circuit means virtual path. Why we use the word virtual? Because it is not fixed all the time, right? The path may change. The path from the same source and the same destination, sorry, the path from the same source to the same destination can change from time to time. Analogy is like, if you want to go from Ujjare to Dharmasthala, that path is fixed. The path doesn't change every time, right? In that case, we cannot call it as a virtual circuit or say virtual path. A virtual path is one that changes with time based on the condition. Here, what might be the condition, on which conditions it changes? We are talking about telecommunication system, right? Here the path may change based on the traffic, right? If the traffic in a particular path is more, what will happen? The system will change the path, ultimately leading to the same destination, right? Such paths are called as virtual paths. So unlike a physical circuit which terminates the physical medium on specific physical ports, a virtual circuit is a series of logical connections between the sending and receiving devices. A virtual circuit is a connection between source and destination nodes, which may consist of several different routes. Right? Routes will be different, but ultimately it will reach the same destination. These routes can change at any time. This is what I was talking about. These routes can change at any time, and the incoming return route does not have the mirror image of outgoing route. Means what? Analogy again, let us take, like, if you want to go from Ujjare to Dharmasthala, we have a path, right? Now, while coming back from Dharmasthala to Ujjare, you need not take the same path. You can take any other path which is available. Again, based on the condition. What might be the condition? If that particular road is very busy, you want to return to Ujjare, but that road is busy, very busy. What will you do? You will take another path, but ultimately you are going to reach your destination, that is Ujjare, right? The same thing he is telling here. The routes can change at any time, and the incoming return routes does not have a mirror to the outgoing route. Means what? The incoming route and outgoing route need not be same. It can change. When the connections are set up in advance based on the expected traffic patterns, these are termed provisional virtual circuits. Here the connections can be set up in advance. By analyzing the traffic, you can make out the path beforehand only. If you set up the path beforehand, they are called as provisional virtual circuits. Just like you know the word provisional, right? They give provisional degree certificate. Provisional means what? It happens before your actual convocation, right? They expect you to, what is going to say, they expect you to clear the uh, degree exam, and hence they are giving you provisional degree certificate. The same thing here, right? They expect the traffic patterns and they are going to decide the path virtual circuit, right? In that case, it is called as provisional virtual circuit. Now, when the connections are, we have one more scenario where the connections will be set up on demand, and they will be released after the data exchange is complete. Such connections are known as switched virtual circuits. Provisional virtual circuit means they will be decided beforehand only. The paths will be decided beforehand. If that is the case, we call it as provisional virtual circuit. If the path is not decided beforehand, if the path is established based on the traffic scenario, such circuits are called as switched virtual circuits. Next, we talk about network routing. Network routing means what? Establishing the path through network nodes. Network will be consisting of multiple nodes, right? So how the path is established through the nodes, that concept is known as network routing. See, routing refers to the process where a node finds one or more paths to the possible destinations in the network. In this process, control and data processing functions are performed to identify the route and to handle the data during the journey from source to destination. A simple routing process known as control plane, it comprises of 3 stages. The routing process comprises of 3 stages. First stage is called as the neighbor discovery. Second stage is called as topology discovery. Third one is called as path selection. Neighbor discovery means what? It will discover the neighboring nodes, how they are connected. A particular node in the network will discover the neighboring nodes, which all nodes are present in the neighboring, and how they are connected. That is called as neighbor discovery. Topology discovery means it will discover like all the nodes in the network, like it will discover how many nodes are there in the network and how they are connected to each other node, right? That concept is called as topology discovery. Last one is a path selection. Path selection means there they employ what? The algorithms, the shortest path algorithm, all those things, you know, right? Now in path selection, what happens? It will choose the shortest path depending upon the algorithm, right? First, we talk about neighbor discovery. It is the first step whereby the nodes in the network discover the identity of immediate neighbors and their connections to the neighboring nodes. Next, we talk about topology discovery. Here, it is nothing but a process by which a node discovers all other nodes in the network and how they are connected to each other. Neighbor discovery happens only for the neighboring nodes, right? Whereas the topology discovery, it discovers all the nodes in the network and how they are connected to each other. Once the network topology is known, paths from the source to destination can be determined using path computation algorithms or routing protocols. What is a protocol? You know, protocol is nothing but a set of standard rules for data representation, signaling, authentication, and error detection. required to send information over a communication channel. The control plane therefore acquires and then provides reachability information throughout the network. Now, this reachability or routing information disseminated by routing protocols is consolidated in the forwarding table at each node. Means what actually it means is every node in the network will be having something called as a forwarding table. Forwarding table decides which packet has to be transferred to which neighboring node, right? Now that decision will be taken based on many factors, right? Like for example, a node will decide the path based upon a packet is coming from which node, it has to go to which node, right? It takes the decision based on something called as forwarding table. What does this forwarding table contain? It contains the identity of next node and the outgoing interface to forward packets addressed to each destination. In order to handle data more efficiently, it requires additional procedure known as data plane. Till now we are talking about control plane. Now we are talking about something called as data plane. What happens in data plane? It allows a optical node to forward the incoming packets towards their destinations by using the information contained in the forwarding table. This operation involves examining the destination address of the packets, searching the forwarding table to determine the next hop. Hop means hopping from node to node. A hop is nothing but a movement from one node to another is called as the hop, and corresponding outgoing interface, and then forwarding the packets on this next hop. Next we talk about modularity and scalability. Modularity defines the characteristics of a network which allows the meaning of modular, anything that can be added to the system or removed from the system very easily, it is called as a modular, right? If you are able to separate all the parts of the system very easily, we call it as a modular system, right? So here what do you mean by modularity? It defines the characteristics of the network which allows the addition or reduction of networking nodes in a modular fashion. Such modular networks therefore permit the use of wavelengths, that is nothing but wavelength reuse. Wavelength reuse is somewhat similar to the frequency reuse. I hope you guys have studied frequency reuse in the LD subject. Frequency reuse means what? The same frequency will be used, right? And you can use the same frequency at the same time, but not in the same place, right? It should be used in a far off places. I think you are well aware of those concepts. If I make use of the same operating frequency in mobile communication in the same place at the same time, what will happen? They will interfere. And hence, even though you are going for frequency reuse has to be done taking into account certain conditions. The conditions are if you are using the same frequency at the same frequency two times at two different places, those places should be far away from each other. Similarly, here we talk about wavelength reuse. If you are making use of wavelength reuse, right, it will be done in different sections of a large optical network without causing wavelength conflict. Here you may ask like why we are going for wavelength. What is the meaning of wavelength here? Like here every node in the optical network will transmit the data using a particular wavelength. Node 1 will be transmitting the data using wavelength number 1. Similarly, node 2 will be doing it using wavelength 2, right? Hence here also we will be having a concept of wavelength reuse. Next we talk about something called as scalability. It is a property of the network which enables it to progressively accommodate a large number of nodes and end user systems without incurring excessive overhead. Scalability means what? If needed, we should be able to add more number of nodes. If needed, we should be able to remove the number of nodes. If we are able to do that, it is called as scalability. For a network with high number of nodes, scalability becomes difficult to realize as large number of alternative routes are available. How can we achieve scalability? It can be achieved by different ways such as employing a routing hierarchy or by performing route aggregation. Both these techniques help contain the size of routing database. Another common technique for achieving scalability is to reduce the number of routing updates using threshold scheme. So that will be the end of this session.